But I was moving house, and as I was moving house, I saw a OpenReach cabinet that was relatively close, and I thought, okay, fine, it's close enough. And my brain just said, don't need to worry about it. What I didn't realise is close enough was over a bridge, and OpenReach don't take copper over bridges. So whilst it looks close, the copper line was very long, so it ended up me getting a speed that wasn't terrible, but it wasn't what I was used to. And I decided, actually, I could just build my own fibre here. This was, 9 years ago. So I built fibre to a data centre that's local in Woking, where a friend of mine's got some gear there, and then I put 40 gig optics on it. So I've got 40 gig to my house.
That is such a wonderfully geeky anecdote.
It's not for the average consumer.
No, well, it is if you want to go and figure out how to dig fibre.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why he's Chief Strategy Officer.
Is this allowed?
It is allowed.
Hello and welcome to another Telecoms.com podcast. You've had to do without us for a week because of Pierre selfishly going on holiday. How was your holiday, Pierre?
That's great, yeah.
Cool.
Got some fresh air. I did some hiking.
Cool.
Saw a bunch of pine trees.
Excellent.
This is in Vancouver Island.
Yeah.
Nice.
Was that in Canada?
Canada, yeah.
Okay.
It's a great big island just off Vancouver.
Whilst you were there, I was on roller coasters in Florida.
Oof.
It was
On the
glorious.
surface of the sun.
It was glorious.
So there we are. You may have gathered that we have a special guest on the pod, and a returning guest and favourite impression of mine, Neil McRae.
I don't know what to say to that.
So Neil McRae has been. This must be about your fourth or fifth time on. The first few times you were chief architect at BT, and you're now at Juniper. What's your job title at Juniper?
I'm a
Juniper
chief
Network?
strategist for the network technology at Juniper.
Cool. And in fact, you. So I don't think you haven't been on for a while, have you? But you were remembered at the recent Mobile Congress. We went and had dinner with BT, and we chatted to your two former contemporaries, Howard Watson and Greg McCall.
Okay.
And that led me, talking about accents, it led me to try an even shitter South African accent.
Yeah, that was
and my
bad.
Scottish accent. Yeah, that definitely needs some work.
Greg just misses out vowels. There's a video internally. It was quite funny. His team used to wind him up about it, but he's like, I'm just saying it right. Anyway, by the way, congrats to Howard, who got CTO of the year at
did he?
some event we probably aren't allowed to say for sponsorship reasons.
No, it doesn't matter.
Was it
It's fine.
FutureNet.
Yeah, we are because I went.
Ah, okay.
So we were gonna
This
mention
was the
anyway.
thing the last couple of days.
Yeah, well done,
Yeah.
Howard.
Yeah.
Well deserved. And I'm sure the BT gang were very proud of him.
Yeah, well played, mate.
Good event as well, by the way. But we can
Cool.
come on to
We'll
that.
get onto that in one sec. So anyway, here's Neil. Great to have you here. And you had to leg it from Waterloo.
Yeah,
the train was delayed
every
half
time
an
I
hour.
come to this podcast, the train. I don't know if it's because the trains are always terrible, but whenever I come here, so I did my
They're pretty shit. To
$6 million man impression running
sure you
from
were
Waterloo
magnificent.
to here. Yeah, I could hear the music in my head.
And you got that. I mean, didn't the $6 million man used to wear a jacket a bit like
Yeah,
the
he did.
NASA one?
He did actually. He was
Lee Majors.
Lee
Yeah,
Majors.
yeah.
Yeah, he's
Takes you back.
God, I remember that as a kid. Yeah.
I had one
one
of
of my-
those, a little action man where you push the button and his metal arm twatted.
I
something in
loved
front of
that
him.
program actually. Yeah.
It's actually so I'm a big fan of it. And he's seen as the Neil Armstrong in that kind of canon. And so it was always a big thing for me as a kid.
Because he got injured doing like test flights. And shit,
so actually,
he was was that guy who did the first the really famous test flight guy.
God, his name's right going around my head. But I know what you
me
mean.
too.
I'm gonna get.
Yeah.
Lots of people who hear this are gonna say, Neil, how can you forget that guy's name? It'll come to me, but. Actually, you know the intro of that where you see the crash? That's actually a real crash. It was a NASA astronaut,
Chuck Yeager.
Chuck Yeager is the
Yeah, it just came to me.
Speed of sound guy. That's right. Actually, that video is real. So it's not.
Wow.
And it's kind of weird because I was posting about that on Facebook once, and Fred Hayes, who is one of the Apollo 13 astronauts and a good friend of mine, he posted that he knew him and then told me the story that was. I thought that was some bit of theatrical TV, but it was someone he knew, and actually he did. They took some insight or some I don't know the word insight from it because Bobby, I forget his surname. I feel really bad about that, but he lost an eye. So you know one of the things a Bionic Man gets is an eye. They took
super
that
eye.
in real terms. So yeah, it was a real test flight that didn't go well. But turned, the TV series was great.
So it all turned out fine then.
Well, not really, but it was good. I enjoyed.
Who
I
plays
enjoyed
Fred
the movie.
Hayes in the film? Which I only saw for the first time about
Apollo
a week
13.
ago.
Fred Hayes is played by.
Isn't that?
He just passed away recently.
Oh yeah, so the guy who's in Aliens.
Yes, same guy. I forget his
Game
name.
Over
Game
Man.
Over Man. That guy.
Bill
Yeah,
Paxton.
Bill
Bill
Paxton.
Paxton.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Bill Paxton.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Weird Science.
yeah.
He's
Weird Science
in
is a
loads
great
of
film
great,
of its
great
time.
stuff.
So
loads of
he
great
was
stuff.
seriously ill on the mission, wasn't he? He was like,
Yeah, he got an infection.
Yeah.
That I think related to the cold. But I met. We could talk about this forever.
I didn't know
Run out
they
of
were
time.
sitting there in like 3-degree temperature.
Yeah, they were. It was.
Days.
I mean, when you get to all those guys are my heroes. Especially Gene Kranz, who's the flight director guy. He's a serious hero, man. I've met him a few times.
With the Ed Harris character.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
That's cool.
If you go on my Facebook page, you'll see me spamming nothing but loads of this stuff. It's one of my pet loves.
Well, I know you're a proper NASA geek.
I am. Yes. Actually, the jacket I've got was given to me by a NASA astronaut.
Cool.
Apollo 17. So
I think every time I've seen you, you've worn that jacket.
it's a different one, but
you got more than
a
one.
few of them. Yeah. Anyway, humble
All right,
brag.
let me retrieve that
Sorry.
tangent. Before
Do
we
you have a Corvette, a Stingray Corvette?
I don't know. No, I like cars that go around corners.
Oh, actually, while we're talking about tangents, I think we were going to get you on a few weeks ago,
That's
and you
true.
had a pinball tournament. Is that
That
right?
is true. Yes.
So how did that go?
It went okay. I did not too bad.
Is it determined by high score on the same machine, that sort of thing?
No, you play. So there's like a bank of games, and you play a number of them, and you form like what's called a ticket, and then you punch the ticket, and the system tells you, it compares you against everyone else, and then you get ranked. So
Right.
I kind of aim
That
for
seems like over-engineering it. Why not just say who gets the better score?
because different games.
I guess there's lots of luck
different
and
games
stuff
played
involved.
if there's no luck involved in pinball.
Thank you very
No
much.
luck involved in pinball. I mean, you could die for saying something like that at a pinball event.
I retract it unconditionally.
No, so
It's all random.
So I extend an invite for you guys to come down to my
Yeah.
pinball
Yeah,
place.
I'd like to do that.
Whenever you feel like it, come down. Anyone else as well, actually. No,
A
so
little tournament. PA, you come down, we'll film it.
no, I've got all this gear down there, so you don't need to bring anything. But the tournament is. They have different games because there's different styles of play, and you're trying to test every style of play. So it's kind of like
Different
the
styles
decathlon.
of play.
Yeah,
No, this is a rabbit hole, isn't it?
It is. It is.
What you
indeed.
mean? Other than the hit the ball when it comes near the little paddle
Some
style.
telco journalists have had some exposure to this already, haven't they? Because Ray's done this sort of thing.
Ray, I am the guys at Telecom TV. They are. I help them run it. We run a charity event. So I'm a big fundraiser for autistic charities, national autism, and I do a lot of pinball. But before COVID, did a lot of pinball events for that and raised tons of money. And they got involved in it, and
Cool.
it was really cool. And then so I actually had a telecom. I had a telecom kind of exec event that ended up at my house at a pinball tournament, and it was great. Everyone, I got insane amounts of positive feedback about it, and
great.
I've had all the vendors down there, and
Well, talking about Telecom TV, you're not feeling too clever today, are you, Ian? Why is that?
Well, ended up out with Ray and Sean and a few others last night, and finished at about midnight.
So
I think.
what was the reason you bumped into the Telecom TV posse?
So there was an event called FutureNet, which
Okay.
was
Which
the
Neil
one that
just
Howard
referred
won
to.
his award
Yeah.
at, and a really well attended event actually. I mean, it was several hundred people, and it's grown from like not very much a few years ago. And,
Right.
and the representation from operators was really good, as opposed to just having vendors there, which you tend to find at some
Fair play
events.
to 'em.
So, and then we had a few drinks in the bar afterwards, and I think Sean said,
One thing led to another.
Let's go to the pub. Ian, do you want to come along? And I went, yeah. And then we ended up in a Turkish restaurant, and then I found myself on a bus.
I thought you were
about
going to say a Turkish bath there for a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, and as I've mentioned it, I should say, thanks to Sean. 'Cause
Yeah.
He did actually, generously
Sean-
cover my bill. So
Oh, a nice one. Well, Sean gives good night out. First time I met him was in Hong Kong. And he was a member of this like foreign correspondence club in Hong Kong. So all that sort of slightly post-colonial vibe which presumably almost entirely disappeared from Hong Kong now. But yeah, we stayed up till about 4 a.m.
Yeah.
that time as well.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Good laugh. Cool. And anything before we get into it? Any takeaways from the event itself?
I met a few people there, which was good because I got some content for stories, and that's kind of why I went. The sessions themselves, I missed the morning ones on the first day, which Howard was on, and Andrea Donner from Vodafone, who I met, and a few other people. He was Laurent Leboucher from Orange, you might know.
Yeah,
he was.
yeah.
I didn't see that because I was doing Ericsson's results at the time.
Right.
Which
we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so I missed that one, and people said it was quite a good panel. We're going to talk about this, but there's some talk about the investment challenges for the industry and how to get around those.
Okay, well,
that was a big theme, actually. I think the theme of the event's really automation and orchestration, but there was a lot of stuff about
investment challenges,
the state of the industry.
So that is going to be our sort of broader theme of this. Is going to be, I in a headline a few weeks ago used the phrase telecom recession, and if you look at both Ericsson and Nokia came out with their Q1 numbers this week, and they're both a bit shit, weren't they? I don't think they were much shitter than people anticipated. Ericsson's share price actually went up a little bit, but the direction of travel has been for declining revenues for quite a while. The thing is, like Ericsson, well, both of them managed to, on declining revenues, still have really increased margin and profitability. There are a couple of different reasons. Nokia's was largely flattered by a bunch of intellectual property deals that are kind of one-offs, and they literally have 100% margin on their IP deals.
But I think Ericsson's the same.
Yeah, what was their one-off then?
The reason Ericsson's profits were good was partly to do with licensing as well.
Oh, was it?
Their licensing revenues are up 25%, and it's basically pure profit, I think. So
yeah, exactly.
Because they've
already got the IP.
Book all their R&D charges somewhere else, and
that's right.
It's obviously not free to do licensing, but you stick it in another bit of the company, and then it looks like it's 100% pure gross margin. But
fair enough.
They've depreciated the cost of the investment already.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So,
but I think the headline results were quite similar in a way in terms of, like you say, sales down, profits up, and I think Ericsson was up quite significantly on the day, like 6% in the morning.
Something like that.
I think Nokia was flat. Up a little bit today.
Oh, it was flat when I was writing it this morning.
Flattish. The moving parts are quite different, and the worry for me was, Ericsson, it's obviously reflective of a downturn in the market, and especially in North America, where we keep hearing that inventory levels were built
and
up.
India.
India basically built 5G so quickly, and now they've done.
They just went mad, and then just sort of.
That seems to be the story.
Knocked it on the head,
and therefore it's finished. It seems.
Yeah, you look at my headline for Nokia's that I just wrote this morning before coming here was. Ericsson, but even more so.
Yeah,
and just one thing I'll quickly say about the regional stuff. There's a chart that I screenshot from their presentation. So North America, which basically means US, doesn't it? With all due respect to Canada, was down 37%, but India was down 68%.
Yeah. Well, the scary thing about Nokia is, so if you compare most of Ericsson with the mobile bit of Nokia. So Ericsson's mainly networks, and that's mainly mobile networks. And I think it was down 19% on a constant currency basis year on year.
Their overall was 19, yeah.
Well, the constant currency decline in the networks division was 19, pretty sure. If you look at the...
no, man. Year on year changed 39% for mobile networks.
Ericsson.
Oh, sorry.
Give me time.
Sorry, I thought we were talking about Nokia.
No, so that's Ericsson. Nokia was, their mobile business was down like 39% year on year, and they basically that unit's quite young. They've obviously done mobile for a long time, but it used to be included in the bigger network division that does fixed and IP and optical and all that stuff. So I think one of the things that Pekka Lundmark, who's the current CEO, did when he came in was to create a standalone mobile unit, so it's more accountable to investors and you can see what's going on. And this is the first time since he did that, which is 2020, that it's reported an operating loss. So it's now an unprofitable unit. You have a sales drop like that, then it's going to be quite.
You know what I mean? So just to confirm, Ian was right that it was down. The Ericsson's was down 19% on their networks bit, and as I falsely interrupted, Nokia's mobile networks bit was down on adjusted for adjustments, 37%.
And I think the reason for that is they're both affected by the same market dynamics in terms of telcos not really wanting to spend very much at the moment because their own sales aren't growing, and as I say, stockpile build up in North America seems to have been a big deal, which is where they make a lot of their profits. But then Nokia obviously lost this deal with AT&T at the end of last year.
Well, I've got just one thing before I invite Neil to get involved on this. As you were just saying, and I noted in my sort of final sentence of my thing I wrote this morning, I said Nokia's business is more diversified. Oh shit, there's a typo. I've written more diversified that Ericsson's, whereas it should say than. I wonder if I can correct the typo live on the pod. Anyway, and then I go, but its fixed line unit still seems to track the mobile market quite closely, with both likely dependent on growing data traffic for demand. So, Neil, just thoughts generally on the sort of constantly declining revenues for these two kit vendors, and am I right? You know a hell of a lot more about this stuff than I do. Am I right to say that there is a lot of correlation between the fixed and mobile markets in terms of what macro stuff affects them?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, yes. But look. I mean, I think it's fair to say that telecommunications companies are, they've done a big chunk of investment. Now they're looking for a return on it, and that affects the industry. So, Juniper, where I work, it's been a tough couple of years for us because of that. And I don't, I'm kind of surprised that there's a surprise around that, because back in the 4G days and 3G days, kind of similar things happened. The fixed and mobile markets, increasingly the big fixed networks have got mobile divisions and vice versa, so there's a lot of overlap. But and then there's a lot of, where do I prioritize the investment? So if you look at the UK here right now, it's investments prioritized on fixed and fibre building. There's huge amounts of cash going into that.
Lots of investor cash.
Yeah, and
speculative cash.
But it's kind of something I always raise a slight kind of nervousness about, which is, hey, how fast can we build the network versus what do you actually need the network for? And you see speed tests. So I've got, someone on the way in, I've got this latest service and it gives me 2 gig, and I can't imagine ever needing that at home. Actually, I built my own, long story, but I built my own fibre to my house because I made a mistake in assuming something. I ended up having to dig the road up myself and put fibre in.
You literally dug the road?
Yeah, I mean, I've in my lifetime...
Doesn't the local council normally have something to say about that?
You can't just kind of wander out with a pickaxe and start digging the road, kind of Flintstone style. But no, I was moving house, and as I was moving house, I saw a OpenReach cabinet that was relatively close, and I thought, okay, fine, it's close enough. And my brain just said, don't need to worry about it. What I didn't realize is close enough was over a bridge, and OpenReach don't take copper over bridges. So whilst it looks close, the copper line was very long, so it ended up me getting a speed that wasn't terrible, but it wasn't what I was used to. And I decided, actually, I could just build my own fibre here. This was, 9 years ago. So I built fibre to a data centre that's local in Woking, where a friend of mine's got some gear there, and then I put 40 gig optics on it. So I've got 40 gig to my house.
That is such a wonderfully geeky anecdote.
It's not for the average consumer.
No, well, it is if you want to go and figure out how to dig fibre.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why he's chief strategy officer.
Is this allowed?
It is allowed. It's not. I mean, you guys are chuckling. It's not the first time. It's not the first time I've done it. So
no, I believe you, mate.
Another previous organisation, not the last one, not the one I'm at. We were building fibre up the Metropolitan line. I used to live right next to the Metropolitan line, so I was thinking, how much would it cost to pull a fibre off and take it here to this bit? And they're like, oh, this much. I was like, okay, I'll take that. And so in 2005, I had 10 gigs to my home.
Right.
So I kind of got used to having a certain bandwidth. So when I go from 10 gig and I move down to 30 meg, it was like, oh, that's painful. So I just decided to do something about it. But
But you were just saying that you didn't think you'd need 2 gig, didn't you? Just
no, but like everyone, it's like the Ferrari thing. I'm going to buy a Ferrari,
Right,
but I can only drive it 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It still looks good, right? No, when you're I kind of believe if you're I'm passionate about networks. You guys know that, so I'm going to be as passionate as I can. Like, I'm going to test stuff and do stuff at home. Drives my wife nuts because she's trying to work and I'm like ripping network cables out and
sort of
terminating fiber and
flashes and
installing
explosions
satellite
going on in the background.
dishes.
Bunsen burners and shit.
But no, and actually, it's a great way of learning because it's hard for. I mean, one of the challenges engineers have today when we're building the internet. I was here when we set Demon Internet up back in the 90s. You could break it. No one knew. Now someone breaks it, and you got some guy from the BBC turning up to say, "Hey, what happened?" And it's which is great.
Outages are major news.
Because it's good on some respects because it says that we've done something that's had a big difference. On the flip side, it's problems happen, you got to solve them. But and it's hard for engineers today to kind of learn from mistakes because if you make a mistake in production, it's painful. And actually, those organisations that do best for it are the ones that then, hey, okay, you made a mistake. What do we learn from it? And actually, that's one of the things that Howard was really good at when things went wrong at BT. We'd kind of have our drains up and say, okay, what do we learn from this? And I kind of encourage everyone to have that sort of mentality because that's how you get better at what you do.
I've got to say, actually, getting to know you, and I've met Howard a few times, but at Mobile Congress, the first time, I was sat pretty much opposite Greg at this dinner we had, so I got to have a really good chat with him. And I got to say how these 3 people who are like in your various times the most senior techies at one of the biggest technology companies in the country, how completely down to earth all 3 of you are. It's
we're just people, basically. But yeah, look, we're just trying to. My purpose in life is to get people connected. It took me a while to realise that. I just thought this is great technology, but actually, when I was at university, I wrote an email program, and that's what got me into the internet. And I kind of like this. I was just kind of weird.
What did you study at university?
Software engineering.
Right.
I was kind of this weird geek that would look at the mail headers to see where this email had gone, and the fact that it kind of gone all the way around the world made me quite excited, and that's what kind of got me into connectivity.
You're sort of like, you got that kind of mind where you're seeing the Matrix as those stream of numbers rather than the actual picture. You can see all the shit that's going on behind the scenes.
So I'm a red pill guy then, is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't doubt that for 1 second.
Yeah, I mean, Matrix kind of is a great movie, but yeah, look, it's. I just think, I just kind of think that the more. I think we live in we're such a lucky group of folks to live in a time where we're bringing people together through connectivity. Even in there's so many challenges in the world, but I've seen some great moments, some really simple moments. Like once I took my team to a Tesco's branch. Other supermarkets are available. And they were all like, why are you taking us here? So this was 23rd of December, and I made it mandatory. I don't often do that, but I made it mandatory. I want you to come and see.
Imagine that email, mandatory Tesco's visit.
Yes.
What the fuck, is he pissed?
So we all turned up, and we kind of stood where the kind of checkout, and it was 23rd, it was crazy. You can imagine, people were buying turkeys and all sorts of stuff. And I just said to the team, I said, and Tesco's were a customer of us at that time, I said, every single bleep on a till runs over our network. Just imagine if our network wasn't there or we didn't have this capability, what would it mean for, not for Tesco's, but for the people who want to have a phenomenal Christmas? We are at the heart of it.
Yeah.
And then,
Well, actually, pausing for one brief little tangent inspired by your 23rd of December point, what I want to get onto is this sort of sense of slight like recession or gloom, despite this fact that it is as absolutely central. But quick tangent, I learned this Easter that if you leave it till the day before Easter to go and buy your lamb and your veggies and your trimmings,
You won't
it's all
get that.
fucking half price. No, it's there.
Really?
It's all there. Sainsbury's had tons of it, and it's all half price. They're selling like great
Well,
big bags of
they're pretty
potatoes for
good on
30p.
discounts anyway, Tesco's, I think.
Yeah. Well, this was Sainsbury's.
Sainsbury's, all right.
But the legs of lamb were all half price anyway. But yeah, back to the more pertinent point.
I mean, in terms
why,
of-
when it's so crucial, do we get a sense of there being no growth, no investment, not much action going on?
So I think ultimately we've been focused, in a big way on one specific segment of the network use, which is consumers. It's hard to find someone who doesn't have a smartphone now.
Yeah.
They're still out there, but they're a dying breed to some extent. But I think there is so much more, and I think I've said this before. I'm gonna bring my prop out for a second. We have done an amazing job of connecting this device.
Yeah.
I mean, it's inspired me. It's made me feel amazing how well we have done this. But there's so much more than just to this point. So how do we keep building networks that go beyond this device? How do we build them into supermarkets? How do we build them into car parks? How do we build them into factories? How do we build them into places where the network doesn't exist? To increase that kind of, part of the reason we build all this IT and automation and all this network is to kind of improve life. We've improved life dramatically. Like I can click and, a taxi turns up. I can click and get on a plane. I can click and do my taxis painfully.
You
But
do your taxes on your phone.
pretty much, yeah.
Blimey. I'll have to look into that.
It's an app. I'll show you the app.
Right.
But we've been able to do all this amazing stuff. We watch TV. The first time I saw a picture of my grandson was on my phone. So we do all this amazing stuff. But that's what we've been doing for 10 years.
Yeah.
We need to look. This is important, but how do we get beyond that? And I think there's so much opportunity. And then I'll call out one thing. I don't want to get bogged down in this
No, don't
because it'll spiral. But AI right now, there's a whole bunch of kind of like amazing stuff going on AI. There's some skeptics, there's some worries, all the things that you get with a new thing. But I think there's stuff in that technology that will drive network traffic. It will drive capabilities into things. It will make going to Tesco's or the thing that you do even better. But it'll also help businesses massively. And that's one example. And are we really biting into that challenge? I'm not sure. Are we biting into the challenge of how do we make factories more efficient in a world of sustainability challenges, right? So I look at all of that and see there's massive opportunity, and I look, I'll mention one thing that we've been doing at work, which is we've got our Mist AI Wi-Fi platform, which we can take into a network and literally go from thousands of trouble tickets to almost none. Because we're leveraging AI on our Wi-Fi platform so that you as a business aren't focused on dealing with network issues, you're focused on running your business. And, I think there's a lot more of that type of thinking that we need to do in our industry generically. I think the hyperscalers have nailed it massively well.
Worryingly well.
Well, in some ways, look, you have to,
just in terms of dominance of a few players. That's all. I'm not saying they don't deserve it. I'm not saying they're not really good at what they do. I just get a bit freaked out by the ubiquity and dominance of a few.
In their own space, yes, but there's so many spaces they need to serve. So
That's true.
I think it's right to have a level of caution on everything, of course. But I kind of feel that we've got to figure out how do we. So and this is kind of for me kind of. If I was at a telco, what would the strategy be? Number one is this infrastructure that we've been like spending so much effort on for the last 10 years. We've done a great job, but I want to automate it. I don't want, like, at the moment, any large telco's got thousands of people just keeping this running. It shouldn't be any people. There is no. If you look at what the hyperscalers have achieved in terms of what they're able to run and manage, and Netflix. If you imagine Netflix ran their business like telco, you'd walk into Netflix's HQ, there'd be a line of videotape players, and when someone said, I want to watch this, there'd be a guy like sticking tapes in.
Are you telling me that telcos are still like those old ones from like the the wartime where women sticking stuff in holes.
But see that, but actually, you've highlighted a point where actually historically we have evolved. Look, BT, my old shop, they're 177 years old this year. So to say that the telco hasn't evolved, I think's challenging. I think, but what's happened is the evolutionary steps have shortened in terms of half-life, right?
Yes.
So you've got to evolve quicker, and I think that's something that our industry isn't used to, but has to get used to it. If we don't figure out how we move quicker and how we react quicker.
Well, that's a lot of the rhetoric behind sort of digital transformation and DevOps and all that sort of stuff, isn't it?
In some ways, but it's also about willingness to try stuff. So look,
that's true.
Look, if I think about 20 years ago, if any telco service was provided by a telco, that's not the case anymore. And what do we take our eye off the? Oh, sorry, my phone's interfering. Sorry. Do we take our eye off the ball in terms of what our customers need and demand? I tell you, an organization I worked for in the past had Netflix. They wanted, they had a Netflix thing, online video on demand. It was there, and it's like, well, we should roll this out. I'm like, don't know if we want to roll this out. We might upset all the TV companies who are a big customer.
Yeah.
It's there's all these pieces of this jigsaw puzzle that have ended up us being in the position that we're at. And ultimately, for me, it's, hey, customer, what do you need, and how can we help you for it? Because actually, customers trust. There's a huge amount of trust in the industry from customers, and I see this when I'm out and about talking to people. They want us to do more. So how do we do more, basically?
One thing that often fascinates me, a bit of a tangent from what you were talking about, is when there are cultural impediments, when all the potential, all the intellectual property, all the opportunity is there to evolve, but there are cultural or business impediments. Classic ones being Kodak having a lot of the patents of digital cameras, whereas conversely, Apple, the prop you just got out for people listening was an iPhone. When the iPhone came out, it's clearly going to cannibalize the fuck out of iPods, but Steve Jobs didn't think twice about it.
Exactly.
So those are two sort of contrary examples. Just one other thing that I wanted to bring up, that is, you were talking about using the network for other things, and I wanted to bring it back to sort of Nokia and Ericsson and whether they are barometers of an industry that's in poor health or not. Obviously, a big part of Ericsson's strategy is this network exposure, APIs through the Vonage acquisition, all that sort of thing. When you talk about using the network for different things, is that one of the things that springs to mind? Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's how do we create more things in the network that add value, and I think Vonage is potentially one of them. There's been a lot of focus on APIs over the last couple of years, specifically on the mobile side, but actually on the fixed network side, we've kind of been there for a while. I think anything that enables people to use the network more, and also takes away this kind of the mindset in kind of telco can be, you order something, you wait, you get it. Why can't I order it and get it right away? And the mindset in the hyperscalers or in these kind of over the top players, as we call them, is you buy and you get it right away. I think, was it Netflix? I remember seeing a presentation where Netflix they measured how quickly it was from someone signing up to someone watching something. I don't think we have that. I don't think we have as sharp a mindset as that. So anything that adds capability and allows people to do stuff in the network, I think, has to be, applauded. Is it the right thing? Well, if you don't do it, you'll never know. So how do we experiment?
Do you think there's like a bit of a... I mean, you were saying that, we've been through this before with 3G and 4G. Once they get rolled out, you go into a bit of a trough anyway. But having, you take that on board, and especially in countries like China and India, where it seems to have been rolled out very quickly, there does seem to be this expectation on the part of the operator. I mean, they're not in very good condition, the vendors, obviously, and if they're laying off, I think Nokia's already laid off about 16,000 people over the last few years, and they're now talking about up to 14,000, and the size of the organisation is going to end up at 70-odd down from over 100 when they merged with Alcatel-Lucent. And it kind of worries you in terms of, we've only got these two vendors that do the equipment for the RAN, and we need to keep them healthy to a certain extent. And the message from their CEOs is, well, I just find a bit... I mean, I'm not saying I've got great ideas about how to solve this, but it just seems to be the operators will need to spend at some point because data
Hopefully
growth
second
is
half of
building
this
up.
year.
And hopefully there's not a lot of it's not a very upbeat message for a telco to be told that, oi, you eventually you're going to have to sort of, feed yourself
And the only real driver being capacity.
and the only real driver being capacity and all the stuff you were talking about
that's
sounds
always
really good.
but if you think about it, all the only driver that's ever been has been capacity. If you think about the early days of the internet, we had computers faster than modems. You download something, you'd be waiting for hours. We've always had that problem. Now we're getting to the problem where actually the network's fast enough. And it's now about using it smarter, in my view. So, look, I don't know I wouldn't say that there's two players. I think Samsung have shown that there's definitely more than two players. I think NEC are also one of the things, and actually. One of the things I was very lucky to do is when I joined Juniper, I wanted to get a more kind of global perspective on the industry because, I've got my mental model of I've worked here in the UK for my entire life. So, the UK market, I've got this real strong view of it. So, I went to South Africa, I went to Japan, I went to a few other places just to get a sense of what's the market there. And actually in Japan, I mean, there's, which is seen as kind of almost like a kind of highlight of our industry where things are always good. Actually, Japan, things weren't so great either. There's a lot of concern about the state of the industry, but then you have NTT who said, okay, look, how can we innovate our way out of this? So they've got this thing called ION that I was really amazed by, which is they're building this kind of optical network. They don't know what all the use cases are for. They've got some of them, but that's driving them to solve problems and create capabilities that they can monetize and do stuff for. Is it going to be the fix for their challenges? I don't know, but they were at least putting something down on paper that said, look, we've got these issues. How can we look at doing more with the network? And I was really inspired by that because I hadn't seen anything. I mean, it's huge in terms of the scale they're thinking about. It's called ION. If you Google it, you'll hear about it. IOWN.
Okay.
I think it's optical wireless network, and it's a. There's tons of collateral there about what they're doing, how they're researching it, and I think some of our industry needs to take more of that approach. We've traditionally been quite a risk averse industry, especially the telcos themselves. But I think look, in a world, we also have a lot of great work coming out of the kind of Open RAN sector. Not all of it's great in terms of going to market and making a difference, but there's some really great ideas about how we can optimize in telcos. So things like the RIC, where we can add a ton of automation to something that's been very hard to automate. There's new focus on different use cases. So again, one of the next big challenges of 5G is how do you really build a network that goes beyond macro, takes it to street level, takes it indoors, takes it to the places where it's more challenging. And I think in the Open RAN space, there's tons of great stuff coming out on that, and a lot of focus on that. And actually, it's not about interrupt stuff. It's just, hey, we're building this, so we happen to be using Open RAN, and I'm actually quite excited about that. And we've done some work in that space ourselves, but there's a lot of things happening that probably aren't as coordinated as you might like because that's the nature of business. But I think there's more than just Nokia and Ericsson. I think I've worked with both those companies. They're great companies. I'm convinced that they'll turn it around.
Yeah.
But I do think we are a cyclical type business where we go through these cycles. I think what's probably makes me a bit more nervous is in the past, through some of the dark days of 3G or even ADSL, there was like, well, we got ADSL 2 coming, or we got VDSL coming, or we got 4G coming, or we got HSDPA coming that's going to boost things. And we kind of had that view of 4G. Well, 5G's coming, and it's probably 5G hasn't landed probably in the way that we wanted it to land, because the promise of 5G was a lot more than what's materialized so far.
Yeah.
And I think, we perhaps had this, trying to think of the word, but perhaps ambitious view, I'll use the word ambitious, to say, well, look, we're going to turn up with 5G into business and we're going to transform business and it's going to happen overnight. And the stark reality is that's not how things work. If you go into a company and say, hey, how can you optimize it? Like, well, the people that come and say, well, what can the network do for me? And the network guys will say, well, what do you do and how do you do it? And there's going to be this coming together such that the network experts and the kind of, I don't know, the manufacturing experts, let's use that as an come together to leverage these capabilities to improve them. That does not happen overnight. That takes time. It's probably a 5 to 10 year cycle.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, I'll use terms like killer app in the knowledge that they're very crude and unfairly sort of reductive, but they're useful in so much as, people are looking for, if not a killer app, then just more obvious commercial use cases for this ubiquitous connectivity.
Value, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for something that does something for them.
I mean, that was one of the themes a bit at FutureNet on a couple of the panels that, and it's not a new one, it's been heard before, but the technology was sort of put ahead of any obvious applications. And there's a lot of talk about standalone. I spoke to Andrea Donner about that because Vodafone's trying to make a little bit of a push on it, and they're kind of linking it to their potential 3 merger at the moment. We need to sort of have that happen to be able to invest in this technology and roll it out. But at the same time, the cliches that get thrown out are things like remote control surgery, cars, aside from those, it's kind of hard to see a lot. The one that I found kind of interesting, and I think EE did this as well actually a long time ago, was this use of 5G for broadcasting in the broadcasting sector. So you can take away a lot of the wiring and the cabling, those satellite dishes. I mean, Vodafone talked about this at the event a bit, and because they'd done this coronation broadcast, and it was quite an efficient way of doing it. And the idea is if you save the broadcasters some money that they're spending on cabling and fibre and inefficient ways of doing it, then maybe that's a bit of a growth opportunity.
And not just broadcast, like for example, Pierre's cameras here, where he saves it all to like SD cards, don't you?
Yeah.
As a backup, yeah.
Oh, as a backup. But what is it being saved onto your hard drive straight away? So I was just thinking, like remotely, if all this stuff was being like instantly saved to the cloud, that presumably be quite a handy tool for you as well, in terms of, especially if it's done remotely.
I mean, there's dozens of cloud video management systems, and broadcasting is a great area where I think there is opportunity to go beyond the smartphone in a big way. So BT Sport, they did lots of 5G trials whilst we're setting up. Actually, the stuff that Vodafone did and Andrea's team did in the coronation was really actually quite cool when you look at the detail of it. It's impressive. It was still a kind of almost semi-dedicated network, but it's whether that was great or not, it kind of starts you thinking, here's an idea, how do we build on that idea? And I think that was a great experiment for Vodafone to do, and we need more of them actually. So, but broadcast definitely is an area where it's very, again, they're a very low risk kind of industry. So no one wants to see a picture of the test card or the or silence, right?
That girl with the blackboard and
wasn't like
a
puppet. It's a puppet or something, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a girl playing noughts and crosses on a blackboard,
right.
And there's a little clown or a puppet or something sat with her.
No one.
I used to find it a bit creepy. I think
that's that picture must be like 50 years old or something. Scarily.
So for younger listeners, this used to be a thing that came on when there was no telly. When they'd run out of telly, they just put this on.
They turn it off.
It's like the train running out of telly now.
Yeah,
I know.
We run out of telly.
Well, they just invent some rubbish to
they
put
just
on.
Took this. They called it a test card
on an island with axes or something.
They called it a test card
TV.
because it had all different like shapes and lines and stuff. Because I think it was a test card for them to be able to see whether CRTs were working properly
the
or whatever.
thing?
You what?
The circle thing.
Yeah, there's one like that. Yeah, Europe used a like a.
Yeah,
did an EBC one. BBC had their own one, of course.
I'm sure someone interviewed that girl when she was like a 60-year-old woman or something.
Yeah,
they did.
Going, I've had a weird life.
I hope so. She was coining it.
Can you imagine every time the telly went down?
Because I do remember a presentation from the BBC because they actually reshot. I think they found the film. and they reshot it for HD and 4K because it was obviously a PAL thing back in the anyway. I think there's a great opportunity in broadcasters, but there's lots of other areas that I feel that more network stuff could happen. Verizon have done a lot of great stuff, like for the Super Bowl. If you're in the stadium, you've got a phone. There's some really cool.
That is a bit creepy. She got a slightly
really
creepy
cool
expression
stuff.
on her face.
Yeah. There's a.
It was a clown.
There's a kind of.
She was a lovely girl.
Oh, well, this is the Wikipedia. She's called.
It's not creepy in the Shining sense, but
No.
it's still.
So this is a Wikipedia page on her. She's called Carol Hersey. Carol Hersey, born 1958, is an English costume designer, best known for appearing as the centrepiece of the United Kingdom test card F and latterly
F.
J, W, and X.
What's A, B, and C, D?
Do you know what I mean?
I think that those latter ones are the 4K HD ones. I think.
Oh, look, here we go. Hersey is in the Guinness World Records for the longest television appearance in history.
Even longer than Ken Barlow in Coronation Street.
Stands to reason, doesn't it? Anyway, we digress.
Do you think because there's this feeling, I think, with Europe in particular, I think we were talking about China before we came on and how quickly they've deployed 5G, and India as well seems to have done it very, very fast. And there's always this perception that the US is also ahead. I mean, the message from people like Ericsson and Nokia is often, and the operators in Europe, is we're too fragmented, there aren't enough of us. There's this perception that 5G hasn't gone that far in Europe, and I'm always trying to look at that and wonder whether that's accurate or not, whether we really are that much worse off than.
I mean, I think if some countries can build as quickly as they can build, why can't we? I think it's a fair question to ask, and I think the governments of Europe need to really act on that. I think it takes too long to do stuff here. There's too many barriers. It's not, again, and it's something, I mean, I think I've been banging this drum for maybe 10 years. Yeah, China, which is, I don't know, 100 times the size of the UK, I don't know what the number is, but they can do that, they can build out in a fraction of the time it takes us. That just doesn't feel right to me.
But how come they can do it so quickly?
Well,
I mean, they get a bit of help,
because
don't they?
I think the government enables them, because the government sees the value in having and having people connected. I think the same is true for other, actually even some European countries. I look at the Nordics, where they've got great coverage as well. Yeah. But UK and Germany, two of the richest countries in the world, it seems to take forever, and it doesn't. For me, I find that challenging.
Yeah.
You should be able to do it quicker.
No, I think you're making a good point, and you're setting up a challenging example. The only thing I will slightly push back on is there are trade-offs. One of the reasons that we have so much bureaucracy, and I'm with you, time for Pierre to laugh. I'm a small state guy. What's the triumvirate? What's the trifecta that I have? Small state, libertarian, and something else.
You're just a
freedom of
nutter.
speech.
You've done some Facebook app that tells you what you are.
Anarchist nut job. But then again, there does also need to be regulation. There does need to be some kind of structure, and there needs to be things like WTO stuff. Like I get press releases from the European
There needs
Commission.
to be a level playing field for sure.
Yeah, and that's the only thing I'm going to say. I totally take your point about how if the will's there nationally, you can make things happen. But China, one of the reasons China is able to make it, even though it's on such a massive scale, is because it's incredibly centralised, top down.
Yeah, but that's not the argument, because it doesn't just apply to China. It applies to other countries that have that kind of scale where there's only. I mean, that's the argument that the Europeans would throw in without saying they get help from the Chinese government, which they might do. It's just there are three big operators in a market of, what is it, 1.4 billion people.
Yeah.
So each one serves.
Yeah, but
Frederick made that point to me, the head of networks at Ericsson.
This is something that both the weird thing about Nokia's call today that I was on is the figures that that Ericsson came out with about how many customers an operator serves in each market compared with what it's like in China and the US, were exactly the same. It's almost like they'd written the script together.
Well, the messaging from Nokia and Ericsson's almost identical at the moment, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I think, and to some extent, there is, the network demand increases, right? And there's still big chunks of the planet that doesn't have the right networking, so it's it's got to arrive. But I do feel that we need to have more innovation in terms of uses of the network to really drive not just the speed. Because I think we've done speed. In fact, I think we did speed like 5 years ago, but it feels like we're still banging the speed drum. which is
partly in the absence of anything else.
Exactly, but that's but then you've got the others that have come along that says, so I'm a big Fortnite player. Fortnite measure how great their gameplay is on thousands of different platforms across all over the world, and they're bringing something to the network. I'm not saying telcos should get into gaming, for sure, but there are ideas out there where loads of great companies are monetizing the network, and I look at them and think, actually, we could do some of that.
Well, Vodafone and Ericsson's been plugging the whole network slice for gaming thing for a while.
Yeah, I mean, so as a pure gamer, no gamer does gaming on wireless.
No, well, I've always thought that as well. I've always thought that.
Yeah.
So I was in Saudi Arabia a couple of months ago, and I found out that the World Cup of video gaming is being held in Saudi Arabia. I didn't know this, so I'm going to.
Why not? They got all the other fucking sports.
They've got every other World Cup.
I'm going to try and qualify for it.
Right, nice.
But one of the things I found
we'll be there
out,
dabbing your brow while you're competing.
I'll need it in that heat.
Yeah.
Luckily, they've got great air conditioning.
They got proper pro AC over there.
So one of the things I'd never been there before, and I found out that there's loads of e-gaming places where you can go and play video games, and there's loads of kids there. And I went to one and started chatting to folks, and it was quite exciting there. But there's one example of a use case. But look, I think there's things we can do in the network to make gaming better for sure. Is slicing and wireless the answer today? Probably not. Is there things we can do to make it better? For sure. But any gamer, and it doesn't help that the fact that Fortnite, when you start up, says, don't, make sure you're connected via cable, it'll make your game better. So we've got to work with them to say why, look, Wi-Fi 10 years ago isn't the Wi-Fi of today. It's still got challenges, but there's things that we've done to improve it.
But are there any other uses for that? Because the APIs thing that we were talking about, which sound like they would enable these network slices to do some of this stuff. The ones that seem to have more traction in a way are things like sort of fraud and location services, and the one that is based on quality on demand always gets linked to gaming. And I'm sort of thinking, what else can you link it to? And also the other problem is if you're using the idea of having quality on demand, it implies you haven't got quality at the moment. I've always thought that's a bit of an issue.
So I'm of a view that
press the not shit button.
Yeah, why don't we give quality all the time? And again, this is somewhat in terms linked to speed, is that we're trying to do things with a network that actually the network's not really, the protocol level is not really designed to do. But there is actually one thing though, which is the way one of the use cases, and I've done a bit of work on this, is kind of safety networks where you're providing some sort of capability that enables either emergency services or some sort of health and safety monitoring, or something that says when things go wrong, and something detects it and acts on it. So if you imagine, a lone worker working in a shipping company, and he falls, and the network detects that there's been no movement, you don't want that being held up. There's something that needs to happen quickly. You don't want that to be held up. We did a use case in BT where we had an ambulance fitted out with all the kind of sensing equipment, so it could do a body scan, and it would send that traffic to the hospital ahead of you arriving there, so that they could work on you. That something like that. You want to make sure that's prioritized. Things like environmental sensors, where where there might be pollution, you want something like that to get priority. So I think there are some things that I think need priority. I think gaming actually is a service that needs some aspect of prioritization. But even in some cases, certain types of video conference, if you've got you do a video conference or a video broadcast to 100 people, it's okay. You do 1,000, it starts to become painful, right? And you've got to think differently about how you do it. There's things like that, but actually, I kind of feel that they're kind of like one-off things. Whereas, how do we use the network more consistently all the time, right? So, so that by default, when you build something, it's network enabled with sensors and with things that allow allow you to rely upon the network more. One thing that drives me insane is car parking. No one should be able to get in a car and go somewhere unless they've already pre-booked where they're going to park. And with a network, we could do that easily. There's nothing to stop us doing that, right? It's not how we work today. But I know you see all these people driving round and round looking for a parking space on a Saturday afternoon.
Oh, and then now that it's become more digital, there's about 10 different fucking suppliers, and you've got to have a different app for each
one.
well.
Yeah, I mean that's another pain point. But there's a lot of things. Also, how can we use, like, networks are great at routing stuff efficiently. How can we use that technology in transportation and in other things so that we drive efficiency? I mean, the kind of algorithms we've got in routing today are just unbelievable at kind of expediting traffic in very complex scenarios. And actually, Tim Whitley, who's my colleague at BT, he was doing a lot of work on that at BT in terms of planning bus trips for students to get to and from school in an effective way. There are lots of things in our technology bag that we almost need to take our technology bag and figure out, okay, this, I'll take route planning. How do we disaggregate that and then use that to challenge the market that's there? Everyone else is doing it to us. We're not doing it to them to some extent.
Use cases are fascinating. If you look at like the boom that's going on with AI right now, and how if you bought Nvidia shares a few years ago, you're fucking laughing. That's basically. Yeah, sadly not. And nor did any of the supposed whizzy investors that I pay to.
Is Semiconductor? What is it? Semiconductor?
TSMC?
No. There's one called, Micro. It's like another stock that's like crazy.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Don't know.
Anyway.
You're not talking about ASML?
No.
Okay, but they're doing all right. Anyway, if you whittle
monopoly, that's why.
If you whittle it down,
they're smart.
yeah, they're ahead of the game. If you whittle it down, it's, I'm going somewhere with this. I feel like, when you see like legal dramas and the judge goes, "Where are you going with this, Mr. Pacino?" I am going somewhere. Just give me a minute.
I'll allow it.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
Overruled.
They basically found a new use case for a commodity we've had for ages, which is processing.
Yep.
Yeah. It just happens that specifically parallel processing, which is why NVIDIA is doing so well. And
super microcomputer. Sorry.
Oh, Supermicro. Yeah, so they're servers. They're basically having a laugh on the back of AI.
So
servers in my house.
2022 in the summer of 2022 was $60. Now it's $950.
Well, what's the difference between their servers and what you get from Dell and HPE then?
Well, that's a good point. And talking about HPE, I nearly forgot about that. We'll come back to that.
Damn, I thought I got away with that.
Let's put a pin in that one. And I was going to say, with Telecoms. So, we started off, I think we were talking just before we started recording, we were going, is Telecoms a bit fucked? And all three of us were going, well, I hope not, because we don't know how to do anything else.
Yeah.
From what you're saying, and actually I was thinking about the biomedical stuff you were talking about, and and we're quite rightly skeptical about robotic surgery, just because we sort of imagine some Boston Dynamics fucking Black Mirror dog coming at us with a scalpel, and we just get that thing away from me. But then you some of the stuff you were talking about, like instant connectivity for paramedics, and then one bit where remote access to skilled clinicians is useful would be, imagine if you're in the ambulance and someone's got blood coming out their ears and the paramedics don't know what the fuck to do about
Absolutely.
it. If there was that
100%.
really good instant connectivity to a clinician who could go, well, what you want to do is sit them up and slap them around the face.
Then you'd be up for remote surgery, wouldn't you, as opposed to when you've got the...
Well, exactly. So there's all sorts, and remote medicine, managing chronic conditions.
Clipping his nails, that's probably as far as automation goes for Scott.
Even then, I'd be like... managing chronic conditions, all that sort of stuff. Like right now, like my GP surgery is trying to get up with the times technologically, but they're still in about the turn of the millennium, and just trying to get basic prescriptions off into fucking nightmares.
Well,
so there's so many ways
to cope with. I mean, that's one area I think the NHS. Is one area that really does need.
So that's what. Before I shut up, that's what I'm leading up to, and the reason I started going on about NVIDIA and chips is when. We're always going to have more uses for connectivity. So telecoms isn't going to go away. People aren't going to suddenly go, bollocks to telecoms.
Exactly.
It's just that we're at a lull right now where we're not sure. I'm not saying we're headed for the next .com bubble. the next speculative bubble, or even the next AI bubble, as is happening to certain semiconductor and server players. But there will be another time where the penny drops and suddenly everyone's like, oh, fucking hell. This is the big use case. We just don't know when or what that's going to be.
Do you feel that there's a good opportunity for telcos in AI as opposed to just sort of dealing with what the hyperscalers throw at them? Can they? Yeah.
So, I think there has to be. So first of all, but the way you become an expert in AI is to leverage it and do it and make it work in your own drink your own champagne, as I used to call it, which is how have we automated the network, and we've got AI doing 90% of what used to be done manually, and when you look at the network, there's no reason why you can't do that. You've got control of all the variables. Yeah, there's some challenges if you go, if you're connecting to another network, then you've got to, but for the most part, most traffic, most network stuff is local. It's, the international side of it's fairly small these days. But I believe that everything in the network is predictable, and AI is great at that kind of area. But it's how do you get on and do it? And we've shown in Juniper with our Mist AI that it can be done. I mean, the difference that we show to customers when we deploy, they don't believe it to start with. Then you show them it, and then like, wow. And this is all driven by AI, so it can be done, and it needs to be done. And I think one of the challenges we definitely face is that, and I've learned this, is that there's kind of this belief that every telco's like a snowflake. Everyone's slightly different, and actually having spent a lot of time with a number of them, yeah, there's some edges that are different, but actually the middle of it, they're all actually pretty much the same in terms of what they do and for the most part how they do it and what their challenges are. So again, to me, that feels like, okay, there's scale there, there's opportunity there. How do we build on that? And actually it's something that in Juniper we're working on to see how we take some of our AI that we've built and apply it more in service provider networks. We've done it in data centers, and no one builds a data center manually anymore. It's just like you just can't do it. So it's all we have a platform called Abstra that kind of pre-populates and designs the data center.
I mean, they don't build it manually.
Well, in terms of the network infrastructure. So
okay.
Because
someone's still got
to yeah, absolutely. You still need to wheel it in, but literally, in terms of what the network and the infrastructure looks like in a data center, you plan all that out in a it's almost like a CAD for networking,
like a digital twin.
You press a button and it orders it, and it arrives. No one's like racking stuff. It gets built and gets shipped in.
So doesn't the design need to change radically because they can't keep up with like things like liquid cooling with GPUs?
So, there's things that you need to add to it. That's the same for everything. The way that you build, an elevator today isn't the same way you built it 20 years ago. So there's things that you need to do. There's some general things that are consistent, like rack sizes and power, and but overall, it's just too painstaking to do it, and you can be so much quicker if you automate it, and it's been done, and we call this intent based, and it works, and there's nothing to stop us taking that technology and deploying it into the kind of wider public networks. The hyperscalers have done it on their own networks.
What is that? So that expression came up a lot this last 2 days.
Intent.
And then people on stage, like Dean Bubley came over to me, who we've had on a few times as well, and he was like, "This intent-based stuff. Whenever anyone explains it, they just use the word declarative, which is not a word you hear anywhere.
Declarative.
Other than when someone's trying to explain intent-based.
Presumably, etymology is declaring something.
Well, you kind of the intent-based works on is here's what I need to achieve. How do I achieve it? And you've got the intelligence to go do it. And
so you take out the steps in between to reach your objectives.
Well, you still need to have them, but what you kind of have is I kind of think of the way I often think about intent-based is like the instructions for a Lego kit. Your intent's to get to number 55, and here's all the steps that you get to do it. Yeah,
right.
And that's a very simplified way of it before someone beats me about it. But if you want to get something different, you can use the same pieces but head in a different direction, right? to do that, how have Lego been able to do that? Well, they've got all these pieces that they've modeled and they know how they go together. So you need to build all that in the data center. That's been done, and to an extent in enterprise, that's kind of been done. It's not as full because those networks tend to be simple. Service provider, we need to do it, but hey, let's turn off the legacy, right? We're still running stuff that was here when the $6 Million Man was on TV. Let's turn that off, right? Because why have we got that? I mean,
turn that off and bring him back.
There is actually a plan to create this. There's a movie coming, the $6 Billion Man.
There's a Fall Guy coming out.
Really?
They
remake everything else.
The Fall Guy.
No one writes anything anymore.
No.
They just remake.
That was the same actor, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the same actor. Steve
Austin.
No,
that's the remake of the character.
Yeah, that's yes.
Anyway, we could. It's a dangerous direction. So the capabilities are there. We've just got to kind of crack out and do that, and do it in a way that adds value. I feel that some of our focus in our industry has not been to really think about those aspects of it. So here's my kind of one of my pet frustrations, and it's not like I'm not trying to be negative about it, because a lot of people think I'm negative about this, but I'm not.
We don't think you're negative.
How do you, if we had the same effort across the industry on creating new services and automation that we have had in Open RAN, oh my God, where would we be? Right. And it's not that the stuff that's been done in Open RAN is bad or negative or not what's required. Of course it is.
Hasn't exactly taken off though, has it?
Well, to some extent, but it's trying to fix something that, apart from maybe one dynamic, isn't broken.
Yeah.
And also it's not very customer focused. Like, I don't know about, and I think I've said this before, no one goes into a mobile phone shop and says,
"Yeah,
are you Open RAN?" and maybe one or two people, I know who they are, friends of mine, no doubt. But no, I mean, it's just, how do we get back to, hey, if we were to build these, if we were to able to, enable a customer. I have this vision in my head of an Uber app for networking where I can click on 3 buildings or 3 things and click a button, and the telco says, yeah, I can connect them together. It costs you £30 or whatever it is, right?
It's just done.
And it's there, right? And you're there enabling people to do the things they need to do rather than being the pain in the ass that always takes 6 weeks to do anything. And there's no reason, absolutely no reason, why we can't do that. There's so many other examples of it being successful. Telco has to do it because we're still running these big 100,000 people organizations. Whereas if you were to build, say you were to build, I don't know, I'll use BT because I know it. If you were to build BT today, it wouldn't look like what BT is today. It'd look wildly different, right?
How many people would it have?
That's a good question that I'm going to refrain from answering for fear of getting
you can
kicked
see the
by my
headline
former
already.
colleagues very hard. I mean, it's less though, right?
Then Ian's on the phone to Howard going, Howard, why have you got
Neil
10,000 too many people?
No, look, it's definitely less, and look, I think BT have said that that's where they're headed. So, but in my mind, but it applies to AT&T, it applies to all the big telcos that have been around for a while, because we're still running tons of legacy stuff. We're still building stuff in buildings that were designed 40 years ago that aren't, the latest. You go into a modern data center today, it's like wow. So.
Do you buy into this thing though, Neil? Just on that point about Rakuten, obviously is one of the green fields in the world, and probably the most prominent one. And they make a big case about, well, we've got this operations team that's really, really, really small compared to NTT Docomo and the other kind of traditional operators. But is that kind of adds up?
Well, I think in terms of, can you run a network with fewer people? Well, yeah, there's Rakuten, but Google. I mean, they run one of the biggest networks in the world, and they don't have 100,000 people running it, right? Yeah. So I think that's my point. There's lots of examples of this. I think some of the stuff Rakuten have done around automation and building, they've pulled some things together is super exciting. I kind of wish they were here 5 years ago, when someone said, hey, Neil, you got to remove all this Huawei stuff because we might have done things slightly differently. They just didn't exist, right? So I think they've got some really cool stuff. Actually, we partner with them and in terms of some of that capability. But I think, where they've got to get to, and where the people creating that technology have got to get to, is they've got to get to scale. And I kind of feel one of the things that I'm slightly nervous about is there's almost a drive to create more of your own technology inside of some of these organizations. Hey, we're going to build our own router, or we're going to build our own BNG, or we're going to build our own optical thing. And that, don't get me wrong, experiment and trying that out is great, but I'm not sure that is making you focused on what your customers need of the network, as opposed to building something that says, hey, customer, here's what it is. And I'm, that's something that kind of makes me a little bit nervous, because I don't think I bang this drum often, we are still not customer focused enough in our industry.
Well, that's one of the reasons I'm a bit dubious about, I'm not expecting you to comment on this, but on Open RAN, because I just see that as almost a distraction in terms of certainly if an operator's thinking we need to do the systems integration ourselves and we're going to hire thousands of software engineers to start handling this kind of stuff, it almost seems like those resources could be better deployed elsewhere to some extent in doing your main thing.
I mean, I have some sympathy for that view. I think I want to put more software engineers and I want to put more network engineers in front of customers. I personally think that's where the most value will come from it. I might be wrong. Could be actually spend it all in Open RAN and life is good. Betting money on technology is, you lose more than you win off is my experience. But anything that allows us to try, anything that's about fixing something we've already got shouldn't be our only focus. It should be, how do we create more things to sell? So, everyone, why aren't telcos buying more kit? Well, because no one's buying from them. Why is no one buying from them? Because they sell three things: broadband, TV, and mobile.
Yeah.
There's nothing new in that, right? So what else as telcos can we sell that's going to drive demand and that our customers want? It's the one that just infuriates me that no one's done a good enough job on. This is security and trust. Telcos are sitting there right now, where people are willing to pay. In fact, I was just reading about the thing on the news about this scam organization that was busted this morning.
Yeah.
That's an area where telcos should be able to offer value, because they've got all the data, they've got great security teams, they know what it means to run a secure and reliable platform. That's something that they should be able to monetize, not just to big companies, but to individuals and people.
Well, I had a really weird experience with cybercrime this week that I hadn't come across before. Which was my son's school closing down for 2 days at the start of the week because they'd been hacked and all their IT systems went down.
Oh, was it like ransomware or something?
And so he told me last week, because he'd heard from friends that school wasn't on this week. And I went, you're making it up, you're going to school.
Yeah, you're taking a piss.
And I sent him off on Monday morning.
It's a good way of trying to skive off school.
And then I got a call on my phone and it's like Alex. And I thought, oh no, what's going on? He should be at school. And I answered the phone and it's a bloke. Is this Ian Morris? And I thought, I was thinking, this is horrible. Like, he's lost his phone and someone's picked it up and somehow. And I'm a teacher at Alex's school. We're not open today. I'm just at the gate sending people away who've come in. But there was no announcement on the website and no emails. And he said the reason we haven't. So I don't know how his friends found out about it even.
But how in today's, look, we have been on, we've been participants in the internet at least for 10 years. How can that be true that that's still happening, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll build on that because it's an amusing story. My mother was AI attacked. So phone rings.
You were talking about this with your dad, I think, weren't
you?
It was a slightly different thing. But
phone rings and it's me.
Right.
Oh,
hey,
shit.
I need
that's
money.
Worse than what happened to my dad.
I need money. So someone basically had AI'd my voice. They phoned my mother, tried to extract money.
Wow.
She phoned me.
Are you sure it wasn't them doing an impression of you like I do?
I don't know how to react to that. There's so many answers in my head. I just don't know how I would.
Is that why your mum didn't fall for it? Because she's like, fuck off, you sound Scottish.
Well, no, but it's so similar. The reason my mother didn't fall for it, she says, the voice was far too polite. But this was a hack, and basically people are going out onto YouTube. So if you're on video or you've got your voice is copyable, that's one of the new hack vectors.
Oh well, there's all sorts of stuff going on with AI and personal intellectual property, like obviously deep fakes and superimposing voices and all that sort of stuff. Listen, I'm going to butt in because we've only got about 20 minutes left, and there's a couple of things I want to cover. And one that I put a pin in that that I said I was going to cover before we go.
Sure.
So back on January the 10th, Telecoms.com wrote a story going, HPE aims to create networking giant with 14 billion Juniper buy. So HPE's buying you.
They are.
And so, obviously you are going to presumably feel slightly constrained in whether you're going to completely shoot from the hip about this. But, I was just looking at some of the messaging they got, it's going to, quote, accelerate AI-driven innovation. And there's a canned quote, the combination of HPE and Juniper advances HPE's portfolio mix towards higher growth solutions, strengthens its high-margin networking business, accelerating HPE's sustainable, profitable growth strategy, which just sounds like a bunch of corporate gobbledygook. I think this was like their pitch when they announced the thing. Anyway, so let's hear it from... I don't expect to go on about it loads, but it's quite 14 billion. That's quite a big deal. And HPE has done networking buys in the past 10 or 20 years, I seem to remember. But this is quite a big one. So, what's it all about?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to say more than the kind of public message that's there. But yeah, HPE are acquiring us. I think, first of all, it's down to the great work that all the Juniper employees have done, that we're an exciting target to be acquired, and that we've got some great technology and great customers out there that HPE want to be part of, HPE rather, because everyone, the day that email came out, everyone's emailing me, "Hey Neil, you're going to be selling printers."
That's it.
That's a different HP, but and not that funny a joke.
I think it's a very funny joke. I think the split was about 10 or 20 years ago when HP had its printer / PC division split from its enterprise division. And HPE obviously stands for HP Enterprise. Yeah,
and look, I think that what's the advantage for Juniper? I think it's all about scale. We're a global company selling all over the world, and it's really difficult to do that without scale, and HP brings some scale. So, I won't go into detail, but when I look at what their capabilities are and what Juniper's capabilities are, I said to Rami, get the deal done quicker, because we've got to go through this process. And, I was like, because I think there's some real excitement about...
He's the chief executive of the network.
Yeah, he's effectively, he's my boss's boss. I work for Raj, who's our CTO. But I'm very excited about it. I think there's some amazing outcomes for customers in these two organizations come together. We've just been talking about how can we do more with the network. I think this will enable us. So, that's pretty much all I can say about it.
Well, that'll be an interesting thing, as and when, obviously, as I anticipated, obviously you're not going to go, nah, to be honest, I think it's a shit idea. But it will be interesting, like back to what we were talking about earlier, and, I think I have to hold my hands up sometimes in the past. I've been really skeptical and going, this 5G is all a bit overhyped and a bit of a waste of time. But then I think recently, like after Mobile World Congress, I was changing my tune a little bit and going, okay, I guess we just got to be patient. Rome wasn't built in a day sort of thing. And hopefully, assuming you survive the acquisition, then you'll be in a good position to talk about some of these use cases that we've spent a lot of this pod talking about. And that will be really interesting to hear about, because it could be that these sort of hybrid IT and telecoms companies, such as this HPE plus Juniper will be, are going to be at the forefront of working out what it is that we can do with networks in the future that we're not doing now, that adds value, as you say. Yeah,
absolutely. I think I think there's a huge opportunity out there for the whole industry, for telcos, for what you guys do, because you're part of it, for everyone who's, our industry ripples for quite some distance, in terms of other industries. And I get my kick when I see someone doing something really cool with our network, and that's what I think we'll be able to do. So, I think it's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Acquisitions are challenging, no question about it. I've done my fair share, and it's all about managing. It's all about making sure that when you do an acquisition, you don't lose value in the process. And I'm I haven't seen and I haven't been that exposed to it, but I think there's lots to be positive about.
I find the whole process fascinating. I mean, I'm not necessarily thinking specifically of Informa, but Informa is a very acquisitive company. And of course, Light Reading, who Ian writes for, was an acquisition back in 2016. Right. Yep. And I find it fascinating, both from the inside.
That long ago?
Yeah, I know.
It's crazy.
Doesn't time fly? You had less grey hair then, mate. I can talk.
Your liver wasn't as damaged either.
Yeah,
that's right. True.
I take a personal pride in that. But you look at it, and you look at it when it first happened, and then suddenly Ray was my line manager, and that's fine. Ray's great, and we got on well. But there's a hell of a lot of things that have to happen organically, where people just have to get on, things have to slot into place, and there's so much variation in how optimally an acquisition and subsequent integration can be done, and there's so much room to fuck it all up. I mean, a lot of this is purely not from an internal point of view, but as a business journalist, the amount of I think the vast majority of M&A that I feel I've written about and commented on doesn't seem to have turned out that well.
Yeah, I mean, so M&A, I've been through quite a few of them now. Both, it's the first time I'm being in a company that's being acquired. I've always been the acquiree, so that's kind of new. Although I actually don't think there's much difference in it. I haven't thought about it a little bit, but you get into these.
Not when they're both really big companies.
No, but you get into these situations where what should we decide? In one of them is like we had a voice platform, but two of the same voice platform. Which one should we pick? And I'm like, well, it's really easy. Follow the customer.
Yeah.
Right. We got 3 million customers on this platform and 1 on that one. That's a no-brainer for me. And in acquisitions, if there's a decision to be made, okay, if I'm the customer looking in, how does this decision affect me? And I think when you frame it in terms of the output of your business to customers, choices are really easy.
The thing about this one,
but there's emotion. Humans are emotion.
Yeah,
we're not always rational.
No.
The people that I've spoken to about this deal, and I did actually interview Antonio Neri at MWC. He's a
really
CEO
smart guy. I've met him a couple of times.
He's very smart. He's very down to earth and easy to sort of chat to, and gave a really sort of good take on the whole rationale for the deal, with AI position is the kind of big thing, I think. And but then I went off and just sort of chatted to people sort of off the record just to get opinions about what they thought of it. And a lot of people, when two big companies come together, they're like, it's going to be a bit like Alcatel and Lucent. It's obviously the one that always gets thrown up in the sector. Everyone's quite positive about it. I'm not just saying that because you're on.
No, I mean,
actually quite upbeat about this deal.
The feedback I've had has been very similar. Of course, everyone's got questions, and there's an element of uncertainty, but I think this is, I think there's more positives to come out of this. And we as the leaders of these companies, we got to make sure that we deliver on them. And for me, that's making sure that the great people that do all the work, both in HPE and in Juniper, we keep the doors enabled for them to keep doing that great work. That's when I look at an acquisition and the people, it's all about, technologies. We'll build technology, we'll figure it out, but the way you do that is by having great people, and I think we've got two sets of great people coming together, and it excites me a lot. And actually, for me personally, HP have got a much bigger footprint in Europe. HPE have got a much bigger footprint in Europe than Juniper has, so it means easier to collaborate with some people. So I'm looking forward to it.
On the personal level, because I know you're looking to me for top tips on how to optimize this of M&A. I think often the communication.
Wait, charge him first.
Charge it first, yeah. No, this first one's for free.
This is the first one.
I'm like a heroin dealer.
This is the free sample.
Yeah. And then after this, he's going to be begging for more.
Yeah, the pusher.
I think the vision of it is often not very well. And this, again, I'm not necessarily referring specifically to personal experience and Informa here. The vision of it isn't very well articulated. And granted, often the vision, I just read out a bit of sort of canned commentary, and it can sometimes get very corporate speak. You know?
but they're always like that.
But then there's the corporate speak that you put in your press release and in your investor calls and all that sort of thing, and then there's the stuff you actually do internally where you go, look, this is the fucking point of it. And I just think sometimes companies struggle to whittle it down to words of one syllable what the point of the whole M&A is.
I mean, it's difficult because, you know, in this process, and I've got like alarm bells going off in my head all over the place just talking about it. But you know, the process of acquisitions and regulation and competition is one that's challenging. And actually, one of the things that's really one of the things I've felt really strong at Juniper is the company wants to do business in the right way. It's very strong on that, and you know that means it's taking a certain position on, okay, here's how we're going to run this, you know, and I think that's the right thing to do, is because at the end of the day, there's employees or shareholders, there's customers. We need to look after all of those stakeholders and take them through this journey. And I know, having, you know, seen what HPE have said, I think they feel the same way. So
that's good to hear.
Look, it's
I think it makes sense in a purely utilitarian way in terms of things like morale and retention and stuff like that. People want to feel part of something that isn't just successful, but has some kind of meaning or profundity to it.
And this is, you know, a message when I've been involved in this is, you know, look, we should be thinking about how does 1 + 1 = 10. You know, where it's not just, hey, we've got 2 lines of products, but we put this together and there's some magic electricity that comes out of it, and we're flying. And again, it's what I said to Rami, who I've worked with for about 20 years, the CEO. I've worked with Juniper for a long time as a customer. You know, it's great and it's kind of weird to see Juniper be acquired, because it's been a standalone business for so long. I remember Pradeep when he set it up. I was at Cable & Wireless, we were one of the first customers. But when you look at what the potential is, it's exciting. So and I think the sense I get from everyone that I speak to is that, you know, they're excited about it. So yeah, we as leaders, the people who run the business, we've got to do a good job, and
cool.
I'm pretty convinced that we will.
So if not before, we'll get you back after that. All clear.
I'll have
tell us how it's
looking
going
for a job or no. I think look, I'd love to come back and after it. I mean, I think probably the message from the business is, I think it's, you know, and I think we've said this publicly, it's, I think early next year they expect it to close. So there's a long time to go, and right now, look, we're business as usual. We're working with our customers, we're selling to our
didn't even know someone on an internal meeting started going on about BAU. And I was like, what is that? Is that some technical, is that some bit of software or something?
You hadn't heard of the term BAU?
No. Well, do you know what? We're quite shielded as journalists. We're quite shielded from most corporate stuff.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting because we spend most of our times commenting on corporate stuff as business journalists, but we don't actually get involved.
We need to figure out a way how could we have you come in as like an employee for a day, experience the corporate lifestyle.
Well, I'm really,
a suit and a tie.
I'm pretty sure I'm not going to name any names, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only journalist of my colleagues who shares this view. I just find nearly all meetings like toe-curlingly painful because they just seem like, a lot of the dialogue just seems kind of redundant. It kind of seems a bit superfluous. Now, having said that, obviously, especially now that, you know, like I work from home, about the only time I come in is for this.
Right.
And there's a certain amount you can achieve through Teams calls or Zoom calls or whatever. And maybe you do need to like have a proper chat every now and then, have those little serendipitous water cooler moments. And so maybe you need to have these meetings, but a lot of the time they just seem like little set pieces where everyone goes, look, I've got some data here that says that we're 10% better than before. And everyone goes, okay, great. And then you sort of think, did we really need to have that fucking meeting? But anyway.
People love having meetings.
Well, I don't.
Well, I mean, there's an old... what's the guy that was from Fawlty Towers?
John Cleese.
There's a John Cleese, it'll be on YouTube, there's a John Cleese thing about bad meetings and good meetings. And of course he does it in his This was an old thing as well, so it was still whilst he was.
But he's great. He's good at grumpy rants.
He was
he was still well, not still
funny these
more
days.
more funny. Let's say he was kind of more.
He's more grumpy.
More, he's a kind of a body actor. He kind of funny, but so he was still doing a lot of that, and it always stuck with me. I was like, I remember I think I saw this when I was in high school. I was thinking, crikey, is it that bad? And actually, I used to, if you're in my team, I have very few. Like, Neil, you don't even have a weekly team meeting. Like, why? Well, isn't there something going on that you want me that you need to tell us? No. What? And I get like my team would like, get us, we need to have a team meeting or we need to have a monthly meeting. I was like, what for? Tell me what you want to have the meeting for, and we'll have a meeting.
And just have it as a thing.
Yeah.
And my team kind of were like, they used to puzzle them, and I was like, look, I can do whatever meetings you want to do, right?
Yeah.
Just bring me an agenda. And in that agenda, what's the outcome we're trying to aim for? Then we'll have all the meetings you like.
Yeah.
But if it's just for me to wax lyrical and what the latest thing is, I don't know, because
No, I actually sometimes worry.
It's easier to talk about doing something than actually doing
there's
it.
that as well. Yeah.
well, I mean,
talking a good game.
Yeah, I mean, there's the meeting where people come in to moan. I love those meetings. So in my old office,
This is one of those meetings.
is it? I'm trying very much not to make it like this. In my old office, I used to.
No, normally between squad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not exclusively.
Like when
There are
me and
moments of upbeatness.
when we go to the pub after the pod, we'll quite often have a bitch about something or other. But that's different. That's
So
just
I
normal.
mean, I get the moaners coming in like, Neil, this is so difficult. I used to have this picture on my wall. It used to drive people nuts. It was actually a picture of Apollo 17, where there's this big crater and this car and an astronaut in the car. And I'm like, look, in the 60s, if they can land a convertible car on the moon, and two guys can drive around it and have a whale of a time, we can fix this problem.
Allegedly.
I used to boil,
Yeah.
I used
I'm
to
kidding.
drive people mental. I used to say, that's hard. What we're doing here is easy by comparison.
What was the last Apollo mission where people actually set foot on the moon?
17.
17.
Yeah,
So
Gene
11,
Cernan.
11 was the Neil Armstrong one. That was
11 was Neil Armstrong. This is Apollo 17.
And 13 was supposed
his
to
coat.
land. but
Three
obviously
guys,
didn't.
Gene Cernan,
For people listening, he's showing us a badge on his coat.
Rob Evans and Jack Schmidt, and he was actually a scientist. They made a big discovery on this mission that you can go Google.
And how many men have actually walked on the moon?
12. I have met 9 of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
By
So
the way,
I was
it's-
named after Neil Armstrong, and
Yeah.
I have to say, name your kids Neil, because it gave me an energy and a passion that is why I'm here right now talking to you guys. No
Some
question
people,
about it.
Who's that name?
some people refuse that name and use their middle name instead. We won't say who.
Okay.
Oh,
No,
contentious.
there's a secret out.
He has come up in conversation earlier on this pod. So you're saying if you called Dave, you would have had a shit career?
No, Dave Scott, Apollo 15.
Oh, right.
Boom.
Bad
Walked on the
example.
moon.
But you seem to be. There's a name for that says the name predetermines
the
what
outcome.
happens. Fuck,
It's
that's a word.
declarative, intent-based.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
I-
it.
Name your baby
I've got it. I've got
something.
it.
Just-
Nominative
No,
determinism.
It's a really easy thing. So, my mum would say, oh, you're named after the first guy walking the moon. And she used to say it to me. And then I started to read about it. And then I kind of got excited about it. These guys did something big. And that's why I like doing big things, because it's, you're the problems they had to solve, like welding, the stuff that they did in let's just use an example. They had to learn a whole entire new way of welding, because the welding that they used, spacecraft
Needs oxygen.
exploded.
Right.
So, and when you look at it like that,
That's a tough lesson to learn.
it
Isn't it?
is. And there's a beautiful video of it.
I didn't realise how
on the
close
internet.
all the Apollo missions were. Like
Yeah,
the first ones were
69 to
really close to
72.
the-
And then they
Yeah.
just thought, hold on a sec.
And I only realised
What's the point?
there's a podcast I listened to called The Rest is History.
Yes.
Which doesn't sound like they'd cover space exploration,
Yeah.
but they did one. Normally it's just Tom Holland and Dominic Sandbrook, who are these
Yeah.
two. And they had one, and it was like the Apollo missions with Tom Hanks. And I thought you're having a laugh. And Tom Hanks was on the
Yeah.
podcast.
So Tom's he's a big space nut.
Yeah, totally. And he knew loads
it's-
about it.
Yeah, and there's he was involved in something that's on in London right now. And anyway, it's a great, for me, it's been a real, and also I kind of, there's some moments in the as a leader, being able to talk about it to your team, like, so the code name for a 5G project in BT was Apollo.
Right.
And it was all about landing the astronauts on the moon and getting them back. And it allowed us to talk to the teams in a way that was I was trying to drive inspiration, because it's hard to be if you inspire people, I think they go and do stuff voluntarily. Oh, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And that's, I tried to use that. I probably bored a lot of people as well, but we were trying to show that. But
so I've got to wrap it up now.
And
in fact, you've got
awesome.
a call.
I've got a call as well.
today.
Yes.
Just one other thought. So you're inspired because your mum said you were named after Neil Armstrong. Maybe when my mum said I was named after some bloke who got carried away and died of cold, that's why I just don't bother to take any risks.
But that was his last name.
Scott the I know. I was just trying to make a joke. Thanks for fucking it up.
Sorry.
So on that note,
Dave Scott again.
Dave Scott Fitzgerald.
Dave Scott.
Yeah. On that shit.
Loads of Scott.
That was because he
Like,
drank
your name,
too much.
like,
That's because he drank too much.
Like,
Well, there we go.
Scotty from Star Trek, man.
Scotty-
Oh
yeah,
my
exactly.
God, he's like the Uber guy.
Another great Scottish accent. I know that's the irony about my shit Scottish accent. Is my name is Scott.
Isn't it shit?
That's not ironic. That's just a statement of fact. Okay, well, look, on that note, everyone's got stuff to do. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me,
yeah, if
guys.
not
Good to
before.
see you.
Well, actually, no, we'll hopefully see you before, given that this deal isn't going to complete
Yeah,
for
it
ages.
feels months away.
So hopefully later on in the year.
cracking on building networks.
Okay, and hopefully the trains will be kinder to you next time.
Yeah, I suspect I'm going to get home at like 4 a.m, but that's life in London, right?
All right, thanks a lot, Neil, and thanks a lot for listening, and make sure you join us for the next one.